Okay, now we're recording. Hi, I'm Janet, a.k.a. Sparrow Moon, and if you want to find out more about me, you can find my website at sparrowmoon.com. A great way to start. Our webinar tonight is Am I Psychic? And I'm your host, Janet Moon, and tonight mostly I want to talk about an introduction to divination. Excuse me. Here we go. Please stay until the end of the webinar. I will be tossing cards and answering questions live, doing the screen sharing when this presentation is over. So what I'll be doing is we'll be throwing 3 cards, and we'll be discussing what each card means and how that pertains to you. There will be a video replay available by tomorrow afternoon. Tonight we will cover characteristics of psychics, types of ESP, and common forms of divination. First off, though, we want to talk about what's psychic and what isn't psychic. We had this question actually come in at Psychic Bitch. I want to know who I am in this world and if I'm gifted. I hear voices and see lights. The lights are my angels. I see their energy and I feel their presence. And our dear, sweet celestial fury answered, you are a Gia monster. What do you think? You need to lay off the peyote. To loosely quote the famous Sylvia Brown, if you are hearing voices, you may need to check into the psych ward. They have medication for that. So basically, this is a real fine line, and I do know psychics that hear voices, and I get a little nervous. Most of the psychics that literally hear those voices are not real balanced people, is what I found. And I have discovered working with people, schizophrenics especially, that, all righty, let me get this better. I've understood most schizophrenics, most psychotic people, most people suffering from a mental illness have psychic abilities. It just comes with them. And so there's a fine line there. If you're actually hearing those voices, if you're hearing someone telling you something, you really need to see a doctor. Or if you're visualizing, if you're looking at this guy and all of a sudden he grows a second head and the second head looks at you and says, he's lying. Well, yeah, your psychic energy's up. He probably is lying. But this is a visual hallucination, and you need to go and see a doctor. When we talk about seeing or hearing in the psychic world, we're talking about in our mind's eye. Like, visualize that favorite pair of sneakers you got in the closet. You know, you can see them in your mind. That's seeing. Or if you hear your mother calling your voice, we all know that sound of our mothers calling our voice, calling our names. That's hearing in your mind, not actually hearing it in your ears. So please note the distinction there, and we don't want to encourage anyone to just go off half-cocked and not take their meds. All right, I read this really great article here, and the title of the article is 3 Common Characteristics of People with Psychic Abilities, and it was written by Christy DeArmond Martin. And I do have a note down here at the bottom to her website if you'd like to find out more about her. She and another woman team host a website, and they're both really, really great psychics. If you want to, they have some good information there, and get on their mailing list. They send out some really great emails. But to go through Christy's article here, she said the 3 common characteristics that psychics have. The first one is imagination. The part of our brain where we see and we psychically tune into things is the same part of our brain that imagination works. So the stronger your imagination, the more you use your imagination, the more you exercise your imagination, the more you're going to exercise your own psychic abilities. Inner focus. This is a tough one, people. This one is you really have to it takes a lot of practice to learn to distinguish what's our own inner busy thoughts and what's those actual psychic thoughts coming to us. There's a lot of thoughts that go on in our brain. We think all these thoughts in our brains are our own and individual and we're separated from everybody else, but we're not. There's a lot of thoughts that come into our brains that are going through other people's brains. We all have this interconnection through this quantum field or something. I'm not sure. Eventually science will figure it out and tell us how it happens. But we have to learn to recognize what thoughts are our own, like she says, the inner musings, my own carrying on about what am I doing with my life thing, and what's actual psychic guidance. And there's little things now. You all can recognize them. Remember the time you were at the grocery store and you saw this bottle of ketchup, and you kept looking at it, and you thought about it. You said, well, I don't have ketchup on my to-do list. I don't think I need ketchup. I don't know why I'm looking at this ketchup. And you go on, and you get home, and a few days later, you get ready to make a meatloaf, and you realize you don't have any ketchup. That's your inner guidance there, and you learn to recognize that. And so when you recognize that, you say, thank you, Lord, I see it now, and you start to pay attention to those thoughts. And maybe the next time you're at the grocery store and this, box of salt jumps out at you and says, I think you should take me home, and just listen and take it home. You'll be surprised, and a few days later you'll realize why you needed that salt. Little things like that. And in time you practice, also a really good way to get that inner focus more clear, to tune it in better, is meditation. Every psychic will tell you that the more we meditate, the stronger it gets. Some psychics can actually meditate and visualize, especially a psychic. If you want to go to a really good quality psychic, and not a phone psychic here, you make the appointment, they take time, they meditate on your situation, and interpret the meditation, and they can literally, visually go through your situation during their meditation. Some of the rest of us, we just have to sit down and do that meditation regularly, take that time out to be quiet and just listen to our inner voices. No, I don't hear voices, but be quiet and just tune in. And even though nothing comes to us during the meditation, we find that later when we're doing the readings, that it brings our focus, makes our focus tighter and keeps things clearer, brings a lot more clarity. So that's the second quality of a psychic. And the third quality is sensitivity, sensitive to others' thoughts, feelings, and emotions. Sometimes this is triggered by touch, vision, hearing, smell, etc. You're at a bar, right, and you can just feel it. You feel this constant tension that's going on, and then later you find out that one guy at one end of the bar and the other person at the other end of the bar didn't like each other, and you're feeling their anger. It's going past you, but you're sensitive and you pick it up. That's one way. Also, sensitivity, you've heard of that. You touch someone, you touch something, an object of theirs, and it makes things more clear. Sometimes, and this has happened to many of us, we walk into a room and we see things and we say, I've been here before, deja vu, right? Or I've dreamed about this, vision. Sometimes vision triggers it, or hearing, smell. Smell actually can trigger more than you would be amazed. And a lot of us actually will have, that's one thing I didn't mention, is ornate, I haven't gotten to, some of us have ornate type psychic impressions. We can actually smell things. And I'll tell you what she smells like, or I had psychics say, I can smell a cigarette. Yeah, he was a smoker, that kind of thing. It's funny what they pick up. All righty, different types of ESP. This is just some real basic ones, and we're just looking at ESP here. We're not talking about psychics who channel. We're not talking about spell casting and changing the world right now. We're just talking about people who are sensitive and what they can see via extrasensory perception. Telepathy. Telepathy is the ability to communicate. Hi, I got a listener. Hi, Lucy. I just looked over. Telepathy is the ability to communicate through the mind. A real good example, you've got your boyfriend, your husband, your best friend, your mother, someone you've gotten along with and you just sync with, and they'll read your mind. I can give you an example. I was in the truck with my boyfriend a while back, and I can do this quite often, and I'll just think, I'm hungry, and he'll turn around to me and say, hey, you want to stop and get something for lunch while we're in town? Those kind of things. Or you can complete each other's sentences. Telepathy happens more than we actually consciously recognize if you take time to look around. But we do pick it up. We do. We pick it up more than you realize. Empathy, the ability to sense someone's emotions. Well, of course, we're going to read body language. We're going to interpret words and vocal tones and those sorts of things. But empathy is more than just that. We can actually, when you call us up, and here's a common question that psychics hear, as how does he feel about me? How does he feel about me? When you call in and you ask that question, we're going to use our empathy, and we're going to tune into this guy's emotions. And we can actually tune in, and it's really hard to sometimes translate, though, especially when you're translating a male's feelings to a female, because males feel much differently than we do. But that's empathy. And let me keep on going. We have precognition and then retrognition, I think is how you pronounce that. I think those two should really be combined, because technically precognition is the future, retrocognition is the past, and they're both. Future is just positive time, past is just negative time, and right now is zero time, right? So they kind of belong on the same timeline, if you ask me. And a lot of psychic readings, especially tarot readings, will do past, present, future. That's a real common reading. But in fact, what I tell people is when the precognitive stuff comes through, for me, it's almost like a memory. It feels like I'm remembering it when I'm actually seeing what's coming in the future. So that's that precognitive, retrocognitive behavior, actually able to see the future. Clairvoyance. Now, this is clairvoyance where you can actually see in your mind's eye again, where like I'm saying to you, and it's kind of weird sometimes. It comes to us in archives. I'll be reading, and I say, well, I'll see the damsel in distress, and the knight rescuing the princess, or maybe I'll see some other analogy. A lot of analogies come up. I see Dorothy and Toto running from the Wicked Witch of the West, and those kind of things. It's funny how the visual stuff, the sense, the seeing comes through, the clairvoyance. Sometimes it comes through very, very clearly for psychics, and some psychics are very good at clairvoyance. They can tell you what he looks like and those sorts of things. I found that some of these psychics, though, that are good at the clairvoyance, at seeing someone, aren't always as good at the precognitive, the predicting the future. They can tell you what he looks like. They can tell you what his name is, but how things are going to work out with him, sometimes they're not as accurate. So there's all different levels of psychics, and some things we do better than others. The clairaudience, again, the hearing the voice, that's not actually hearing a voice, that's in your mind. Again, you hear your mother's voice telling you something, that sort of thing, and it'll come through. Sometimes you'll actually, as a memory or something, it comes through in your mind, but you'll hear someone's actual voice. If you can just learn to focus it and keep your thoughts out of the way. And it takes a very focused mind. Clairsentience. This is where you sense the energies around you, like the psychics that often go along to the ghost hunters and those sorts of things, what they call paranormal investigators. Occasionally they'll bring a psychic along, and she's going to perceive that energy in the house. Or he. And clairsentience can also be used with tools. A pendulum. A pendulum is a very good way to focus clairsentient energy. When we've all played the game, well, many of us have played the game where you hold the needle over a pregnant girl's belly, and if it turns in circles, it's a girl, and if it goes side to side, it's a boy. Right? That really is sensing energies. Also, dowsing. My grandfather was a dowser. He could pick up a stick, and he could walk around, and he could feel where the water was, and he could find water, a dowser. Psychometry, right, is where they touch, and you've heard many psychics do that. They want something to touch, a physical object, to help them to identify. The psychic detectives, you always hear the stories about them, or the story about, the guy who shook the congressman's hand and realized he was going to end up being president and release the bomb and start World War III, and great Stephen King story. That was all about psychometry. Remote viewing. Now, this is very interesting. This is a little bit different than clairvoyance seeing. It's actually a meditation process where you can perceive, where you can literally perceive a physical object on its own. I had a friend who could do this. She could meditate, and she could visualize what her teenage daughter was doing. This was really good. She could see it, and so her daughter never got by with much. Mom could do remote viewing and see what her daughter was doing, physically see the situation her daughter was in. Aura views, viewing a personal energy field. Now, science has proven that we all have auras. Science says that if current runs through a conductor, a magnetic field is going to be generated around that conductor. And because we have electrochemical current flowing up and down in our bodies constantly energetically moving, we are generating a magnetic field, which is called the aura. I had a friend, a roommate, who could view auras, and she was pretty interesting. I mean, she was right on with the auras, too. She could tell me different colors and who was up to things and people who were lying to you and people who were really happy, and auras, you know, how some people have really expanded auras and some of us have really contracted and tight auras. It was really interesting to know about a person. Astral projection, and this is leave your body, to actually leave your body, your soul leave your body is what they say, through transcendental meditation is also that fancy word there. But my friend, again, who could remote view her daughter, one time that accidentally happened, she was meditating and checking up on her daughter, and her daughter was over to sleep over with a girlfriend, and they actually saw Mom. Mom materialized right there in the room and scared the hell out of them. So it is possible to leave your body, but that takes a really strong connection there. Like this is mother really worried and concerned about her daughter kind of thing. And it takes a certain psychic ability. And they can't always I couldn't go to that woman and say, okay, now project and go tell me what he's doing. She doesn't have that kind of a control over it. It's just amazing how it happens sometimes. All righty. And we're moving right along here. Divination, seeing the future. I'm going to talk about, and basically the definition of divination is seeing the future. And I'm going to talk about some of the common forms of divination that we use. Astrology, the tarot, runes, and my favorite, the Qing, palmistry, scrying, and numerology. These are just a few of the basics. There are lots more out there. First off, astrology. First off, real astrology is not your daily horoscope. Oh, please, that bubblegum stuff. You are so much more than just your sun sign. Astrologers use your birth date, your birth time, and your birthplace to look at all of your planets, not just your sun, and what we call the houses. And I won't go into a lot of details right now what that is. But astrology can be used for divination by comparing where the planets are now to compare where the planets were at the time of your born, also called a transit chart. And if any of y'all know me, I write transit charts. I sell transit charts. I believe in transit charts. There's also another common form of astrology called a progress chart. And progress charts, I really think, are not that accurate. And basically, a progress chart says we're going to move your chart one day for every year you've been alive. So by the time you're 30 years old, you're going to look at where your chart was 30 days after you were born. Well, the universe doesn't work on a 365 to 1 ratio. It doesn't work like that, 1 year to 1 day ratio. I'm sorry. So I have problems with that kind of chart, but there are readers who do progress charts. If you're interested in progress charts, sometimes they can actually surprise you. They really can. There are some merits to them. But that's the whole thing about astrology. If you want a real astrologer reading, contact an astrologer if you don't know anything. If you're studying astrology, you want to learn a little bit more about your chart, contact an astrologer. That's how I learned. I just called astrologers, called them. I read the books. I read their articles. I called them again. I ordered from them. And you'll learn it. You learn it in layers, and it takes time. It's a complex science. Now the next one, tarot. This is a really, really common used tool for divination. A lot of people use the tarot. A lot of psychics use tarot. Carl Jung called it the law of synchronicity. It's really, really very interesting how tarot cards work. Psychics use them often, like it says here, because it's a multi-dimensional quality. You can lay out the tarot and find out about the future, about the past, about somebody's health, about finances. You can lay out the tarot to find out, just about any question you want to ask. There's a spread, and the cards are just they're diverse enough. You have 78 cards there. They're diverse enough that you can actually get a pretty good picture depending upon the kinds of spreads you use. There's so many different spreads and so many different decks to choose from. There are other cards of divination. There's the angel cards, there's medicine cards, there's lots of other cards for divination that are not tarot. If it has 78 cards, though, it's probably tarot, and tarot will always have 22 major arcana, cards, and then it will have the 4 suits, just like a deck of playing cards. And tarot is just amazing. They really are, what you can do. I call my prayers my way of talking to God, but my tarot is my way of listening to God. There's a lot of messages that can come through there, and it takes a little practice. It takes a little practice to learn all those 78 cards, and if you really want some diversity, to learn all of the reversed meanings too, which can double it. And after you really get comfortable with those cards, though, it's amazing what you can see and what you can hear and what you can listen to, the messages that come through. Runes. Runes are a very interesting form of divination. They were created by the early Vikings. Some runes, they originally were carved on stones, and they're simple symbols. Like I said, earth-based symbols. They're very simple. They were originally carved on stones and often carried in a pouch, like the one in the picture. Some of these runes have reversed meanings and others don't. Some of them are symmetrical, and so when you turn them upside down, they look the same. So there's not quite so much to interpret. And the runes are like tarot. They can be laid into a spread, or you can just read a single rune. I really enjoy the runes. I enjoy the stick figures, I guess. If you go to my website, sparrowmoon.com, you will find, if you look under the free readings, you'll find a link there to my runes program that I wrote myself. I really enjoy them. In fact, I consult the runes every day. And whenever I have a quick question, should I go ahead and make this purchase? This is a good one. Should I go ahead and make this purchase? I go ask those runes, and it's quite often that they really give me the answer I need to hear. It's just amazing. Like I said, synchronicity. I heard a man say it so well. His name was Bernie Siegel, and I read it in one of his books. He said, and I'm not sure if this is his, but he says, coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous. I truly believe that. I truly, truly believe the more you just let this random, let God have that control of random and live by random, you'll just be amazed the messages you get and how much easier life gets and how real it really is. The I Ching, and that is pronounced I Ching, not I Ching. The I Ching is the oldest form of divination. It was 3,000 years ago. The I Ching's been in the making by the ancient Chinese sages. It is a very, very interesting tool for divination. I use the I Ching when I have personal questions. I very rarely use the Ching to read for others. I reserve that one for me. That's my communing with God again. And the I Ching, they look at life as cyclic, the sages do, and they believe that life changes and it progresses and that you can do things to change your life. This isn't just saying, hey, here's what's going to happen, you're stuck with it, he's going to dump you. The I Ching is saying, here's where you're screwing up. Here's where you're screwing up. They're good at that. and they're really very, very insightful. It's an interesting form of divination. You build a hexagram of 6 lines. 6 lines, and I know a lot of people that just use the 3-coin toss. They'll toss 3 coins for I wrote it down here, for the I Ching. And back what they do is, what you have is you'll have 6 lines, and either one of those, each of those 6 lines, let me slow down and think about this and say it correctly. You have 6 lines in a hexagram, and each of those 6 lines can either be solid or broken, or they can be solid changing or broken changing. So you have 4 possible combinations of 6 lines. And so you can toss the coins. 3 heads mean it's solid and it's changing, right? 2 heads and a tail means it's broken. 1 head and 2 tails is it's solid. 3 tails means it's broken. That's real easy to look up, or you can make up your own thing, so long as you come up with 6 lines, that are one of 4 possibilities on each line. And it's very, very interesting. Then you go, and usually the hard part now is finding a good quality book for the I Ching, because the I Ching's been written for so many, 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 many centuries. A lot of authors have tried to modernize it, and sometimes in the process of modernizing it, They lose the original interpretation, so you want something that's still got that grassroots interpretation of what the sages really wanted you to know, but yet it's written in a form that you can understand. It's a little complicated, but once you find a good book that you can relate to at the bookstore, you buy it, and then you have it, and you toss your coins, or you can buy little divination tools to do the Qing, and it's just amazing. Just amazing how insightful the Qing is and what kind of great advice you can get from the sages. Palmistry. This is really a lot of fun. My mother taught me to read palms when I was a little girl. This is just how simple it is. Learning the different lines on your palms. You have your lifeline, your headline, your heart line. She also talked about how to see the children that was coming, how to read different lines, how to watch stuff. If you can go pick up a book on palmistry at your library, or just read a few articles and check out some websites on the internet, learn some of the basics. You'll be the life of a party. Go to a party and tell people, I read palms. Everybody's going to be wanting you to hold their hand. It is a lot of fun. It really is, and that's a great way to read, for just party kind of psychic work, and especially after a few drinks, and everybody's happy anyhow, and you can get to laughing and giggling and having fun. I did find a tidbit there here I wanted to share with you, and this is from SerenaPowers.com. I was searching and found this on her. I thought this was really cute. She has a lot more there. Just go to SerenaPowers.com and read some of them more, but here's one about palmistry. Just look at where you're wearing your rings, right? If you have a ring on your index finger, you're actually a good leader. In fact, you may actually kind of want to be the boss, right? You're a good leader. People will come to you, though. You're that kind of person that they look to for leadership. If you wear a ring or two, like me, on your middle finger, you have some security issues, right? The ring finger, of course, that's the finger of love. Subconsciously, consciously, we know that's our finger for love. The little finger, the pinky finger, if you've got a ring on your pinky finger, it means you want to share with other people. It's also very good for business. It means person that's into business and networking. If you're wearing a ring on your thumb, you may want to try to too tightly control life. Too tightly even, to the point where you're passively aggressively trying to control people. So watch out for people with thumb rings. And if you're wearing one, you might want to start thinking about taking it off. Oh, it's just a little joke. It's just a little psychological thing. I don't even know if it's real or not, but it does kind of make sense. It's amazing. And crystalmancy, or crystal ball, or scrying. This is a really, really neat one. There we go. Turn that down. Quit echoing. Scrying is very, very interesting. Again, this can work very, very well with your meditation, especially if you've been doing your meditation and you kind of know how to get tuned into those beta waves or whatever they are, the next level of waves, and get your mind slowed down and moving slower. This is a really nice way. In fact, scrying or crystalmancy is called it's looking into something reflective. As I put here, the ancient Greek oracles were silver bowls that they polished. They just polished them shiny, shiny, and then filled them with water. And when people went to consult the oracles, they had to go through a process. They spent a couple of days in these little caves back here in the dark going through meditation and prayer and spiritual stuff, and they had incense and all kinds of wonderful smells, and kind of isolated them from the real world for a little while before then they were finally allowed to go into the room with the oracles and then look into the water and see their future. Might be quite interesting. I should say we should offer a vacation like that. Nostradamus used a black mirror to describe his prophecies. Black, basically, instead of the mirror being painted silver on the back, he had the glass painted black on the back, and then he would stare into this deep black mirror and meditate, and came up with his famous prophecies, the quatrains, right? I know a little bit about Nostradamus. I know he seems to be easier to read backwards than forwards. We can always talk about what he prophesied Hitler, he prophesied whatever, but I'm not sure he's so good at people interpreting what's coming. One thing that's very, very neat is reading tea leaves and coffee grounds is also considered scrying. And that was another one I grew up with. My mother was really good at that, grabbing a coffee cup and reading the coffee grounds. And just she'd tell you what she'd be looking at it and telling us what she sees in it, and then we'd be looking at it and trying to see it and visualize it. And growing up with that makes it a lot simpler, and that's, again, a fun one if you're at a party. If they're not, that's one way to get them to stop drinking the alcohol. Come drink a cup of tea and let me read your tea leaves. Right? One other thing, I'm not sure if this is considered scrying or exactly what this method is. I didn't write it into the page here, but that's candle meditation. And I don't know any of you've tried that, but that is just so interesting and so soothing and can really reveal things. Is staring into a candle, get a nice quiet room, with no interruptions, maybe a little calming music behind you, incense, whatever, and just sit and stare into a candle. I read this in a spell book one time. She said to stare into the candle until it goes completely out of focus and then comes back into focus again, and you'll start to see things. I've tried it. It works. But again, it's going through that process of relaxing your brain and slowing things down to where you can get focused and see, hear, understand these things. And my last one here is numerology. The ancients really had a high esteem for numbers. They truly, truly, I can understand. I've had some higher levels of math. I truly, truly do admire math. I do. I can understand where this admiration comes from. In fact, if any of you read that book, Contact, that Carl Sagan wrote, not the movie, the book, because the movie thought we were too dumb to understand it. Basically, they looked very closely into the number pi, and especially the number pi in different base systems and messages that they were finding from God in number pi. It's quite interesting. So anyhow, back to numerology and messages from God here. The ancient Greeks and the Hebrews, every letter in their alphabet also represented a number. So they often, that's where the original numerology came from, the name. Nowadays, we will use birth dates to calculate one personal number. And again, this is based on our Julian calendar here. My example here is if your birth date is March 23rd, 1973, since March is the third month of the year, it's designated the number 3, and then we take the number 23 for the day and the year 1973, and we total those up. The number 3 plus the month plus 2 plus 3 the day plus 1973 the year. Add those all up and we get 28. Then we add the 2 plus the 8 together and we get 10. We add the 1 plus the 0, and this person's birth path number is a 1. And then again, this is where you go to a book or to a reference somewhere, and this is where you really, really have to take some time and learn numerology, which I don't know. It's kind of like learning astrology, knowing what Leo means, knowing what a Sagittarius is, knowing what the qualities of Pisces are. And then numerology, you take time and you learn what each path is, what each number represents, and then they talk about higher numbers. And there's still even more to learn in numerology that I don't know. But that's your basic numerology. And this is kind of interesting. And over at Psychic Bitch, we do have a numerologist working with us now, Marky. And I'm not sure what Marky's website is, but if you go to psychicbitch.com and look for neurotic numerologist or look for Marky's picture or banner, click on it and check out Marky, or just read some of the stuff he writes. It's just amazing. And it is. It's just amazing, his forecast. There's some magic in numbers. There sure is. And my very last one here. I was planning on doing some 3-card spreads. Basically, we'll do a little divination for anyone's here, but I only have one person here in the attending. And so I have Lucy here. Anyhow, we'll widen this up, and Lucy, I'll chat with you after we stop recording. How's that? So, and here we go. That's it. Yes, you're psychic. Thanks all for attending this webinar. I'm going to stop recording here, and then I'll start doing some spreads with Lucy, so we won't put Lucy out there or whatever. Thank you all so much for being here, and I have another one scheduled sometime in February, very soon, about love, astrology and love signs, what signs are compatible, how to attract a certain signs, and more astrology. So come back then, and Lucy, hang on. I'm going to stop recording, but we'll still be, the webinar will still continue.